Dr. Bruce Banner was a scientist working for the US government to develop a gamma bomb. During the bomb's first testing, he saves a trespassing teenager, but at the same time is exposed to large amounts of gamma rays. Later, he wakes up without a scratch, but he turns into a green giant monster. This is the story of the Incredible Hulk, and stories like this have been told for many different superheroes for many different stories, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Spider-Man. But for all these comic book superheroes, do you know what they all have in common? They all gain their superpower through some kind of radiation exposure. And not just comic books, but movies and all other kinds of media have portrayed radiation as this mysterious force that can either turn you into a monster or a superhero. These tropes have been recycled in Hollywood for half a century. Of course, these are all fiction, to a laughable degree. But due to the amount of media we have all been exposed to as children and adults, do we have a warped perception of radiation? So first, let's look at the science behind radiation and see what it actually is. And next, let's see the history behind radiation and how it was discovered. And finally, let's see the new fascinating uses of radiation in our present time. So, radiation, by definition, is a way of transferring energy from one place to another without anything in between. The sun, the ultimate source of radiation in our solar system, emits energy through space, which is a vacuum. And there are two big categories of radiation: non-ionizing radiation and ionizing radiation. Non-ionizing radiation is the safer type of radiation, like with visible light. Ionizing radiation, on the other hand, is the dangerous type, like with atomic bombs. But how did scientists discover radiation? Well, in the 1800s, a scientist named William Herschel discovered that when he divided sunlight up with a prism, there was this invisible part of the spectrum that still heated things up. And later, a scientist named Marie Curie discovered that certain materials, like radium, gave off energy, which left images on photographic paper. She named this phenomenon radioactivity. And all throughout human history, humanity as a whole has been constantly exposed to small and large amounts of radiation. However, in the beginning, people did not realize that ionizing radiation could be deadly. Even the scientists who were closely studying radioactivity didn't realize the deadliness of their radioactive materials. Marie Curie, who discovered radioactivity, died because of excessive radiation exposure. And of course, normal people also had absolutely no idea of the effects of ionizing radiation, and were often even working at places that used dangerous ionizing radiation with no protection. At the radium doll factories, young women were working to make clock faces with glowing radium, with no protection whatsoever. They were often even licking the radium-covered paintbrushes to sharpen the brush tips. Needless to say, thousands of people got poisoned and many died, and this instilled a fear of radioactivity within Americans. And this fear of radioactivity peaked during World War II, when the governments of the world noticed that this new phenomenon could be used to produce weaponry. These countries studied radioactivity and produced powerful new weapons like the atomic bomb. And the world got to witness the power of this new weapon during the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. However, due to the fact that these facts about radiation were classified, documentary makers and filmmakers couldn't get cold hard facts and started an age of misinformation for a generation. This was when the great monster Godzilla was born, and when many other fanatical superheroes and stories were created, like the Incredible Hulk. And along with the Chernobyl incident, this made people's fear of radiation become insane. This fear of the unknown power of radiation made it difficult for people to see and understand both sides of radiation. And there are many beneficial uses of dangerous ionizing radiation. The most common form are medical x-rays. And recently, this x-ray technology was combined with modern computer technology to create the CT scanner. This allows doctors to scan every little detail of our bodies, including broken bones, soft tissues, tumors, and early disease signs. And doctors can also use gamma rays to scan people's bodies in real time. One of the most common cancers that kills a lot of women is breast cancer. And recently, in the early 80s, breast cancer screening was developed, where a small dose of x-rays are used to look for early cancer. And the amazing thing is, people who get regular breast cancer screenings are 60% less likely to die from breast cancer than those who don't get regular screenings. That's how my grandmother survived breast cancer due to early cancer detection and surgery. And recently, radiation is not just limited to diagnosing diseases, but also treating them. Helen Schmidt was diagnosed with metastatic lung cancer, which only has a 15% survival rate. And the doctors found out that her tumor was close to her heart, and because of how close it was, the doctors decided that they could not operate. However, she decided to try proton therapy, an advanced form of radiation therapy which targets tumors directly while not damaging the organs around it. She completed her treatment before Thanksgiving in 2011 and has been cancer-free since, now fulfilling her passion to travel the world. And often, the amount of radiation in medical imaging is similar to the amount of natural radiation you're exposed to daily. The amount of radiation in breast cancer screening is similar to the amount of radiation in your own home. And as long as you're not blasted with it every hour or so, you're going to be fine. Even the ground, sky, water, and even the human body is covered in radioactive materials. No matter where you are, you're surrounded by them. Speaking of which, what do you think is the most commonly used radiation in your daily life? Well, surprisingly or not, it's microwave radiation. And I'm not just talking about the microwave that you cook your extra buttery gourmet popcorn in. I'm talking about the microwave radiation that's used in communication. And although the microwaves used in there are non-ionizing and are not very powerful, it is a common misconception that they cause harm. You go onto the internet and you find hundreds of communities and websites saying that 5G is going to cause cancer and autism. If these theories were true, we should all be french fries by now. The amount of radiation in medical imaging, the amount of radiation in cellular and radio communication is very weak and cannot penetrate far. And these days, cell phone companies want to pack more data into smaller amounts, so they start to use shorter and shorter wavelengths, so that each cellular generation can run twice as fast as the previous one. So with 4G, if you go under something like a tree, you'll get a weaker signal because of how much it's blocked by the tree. And with 5G, which is super fast, but also super weak, it can barely go a kilometer through the air without being absorbed into it. So, needless to say, all these theories about 5G giving us all cancer or autism are all very unlikely because it can't even penetrate through your skin. So, today, we have learned about radiation, what it is, and how it has been used in our lives in scary and amazing ways, and how it has more recently been used to save lives through medical technology. We currently live in this modern, connected world because of our understanding of radiation. However, certain radiation technologies have been rejected by the public because of how it is portrayed. We need to be able to understand both the benefits and the negatives of radiation so that we can truly use it to its fullest potential. Thank you.